one of my gifts is to be able to see exactly how somebody can use their psychic abilities no matter what industry they are in. So worked with people in the style industry, marketing industry. I've worked with people in medical, construction, food industry. And your psychic gifts can enhance anything that you're doing. So think about it. Like, I was just on a call with a doctor and she was just looking at like changing practices and building her own practice. And she's like, I just don't want to hire the wrong people. I'm like, girl, that's why you have me. But when you're sitting interviewing somebody or you're being interviewed for a position or a job or something, by being able to read that person's energy and really understand them at their core, you can put them in the best possible position inside your company. You can know if something's aligned. You can know if you're purchasing the right house because of the fact of the energetics involved.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ask Julie Ryan Show. It's where we blend spirituality and practicality to help you live a life of purpose and joy. We have Carrie Cardozo with us on this show today. Carrie's a psychic, healer, author, and podcast host who calls herself a clear channel. She works with clients, helping them develop intuitive gifts that enhance their business and personal lives. I'm interested to learn about Carrie's techniques. Please remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your family and friends. Now let's go chat with Carrie. Carrie, welcome to the show. I'm so delighted that you could join us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Oh, well, we've got lots of things to discuss. First of all, for people who don't know, what's a channel?
So that's a great question, actually, because everyone does, at least in the industry. I walk around and people are like, oh, I channeled this or I channeled this. So for me, a channel is a direct connection to either source energy or to a guide or to a higher being that directly relays information. So word for word information in order to be able to get a message across. So that's what a channel is.
Okay, so how do you hook in with the entity or the tree or the dog or the person or whomever? How do you do that?
So for me personally, I'm really incredibly good at reading energetics. So it's not something I actually even have to work at as connecting in. It's always like you're just always connected. As long as you're almost like attuned to a specific frequency, you have the ability to connect with energetics at every moment of the day. But in order to really do that, like somebody who maybe isn't connected all the time, it's a process of like getting out of your head, clearing your opinions, clearing your beliefs, raising your vibration so you become a match for the energetics that you're looking to connect with.
So how do you do that? How do you clear your head and get into the same frequency as spirit?
So there's a lot of things that you can do to really clear your head and get into that frequency. When I'm working with clients to help to teach them do it, same process that I did for myself, the very first step that I have people do is really go in to understand themselves. So we start with healing work right away. One of the main reasons that people have such a hard time connecting to whether it's their intuition or whether it's through channeling or psychic abilities or communicating with nature is the fact that there's a lot going on in the subconscious, or there's a lot of things that are going on with inside the person that are distracting them. They're keeping their vibration low. It is keeping them in their head or their opinions. So I dive in first to really doing some healing work and really looking at what's in the subconscious, where the ego comes in, where there's some beliefs that prevent you from connecting. So somebody who has a really strong belief about something, it can be really hard for them to get channeled information about that because their belief is overriding any of the channeled information that comes in. So that's the first thing. The second thing I have my clients do is work on silencing the mind. So the mind is it's one of those things that I would love to say to psychics, you don't actually need your mind. Like, you don't need it. If you are incredibly good at what you do, the brain is not involved in channeling. at all. It's the information is coming in, you're using your receptors, but the brain and the knowledge that you have, it's not necessary. So the more that we can silence the brain, silence the mind, that chatter, the egos, those opinions, all that kind of stuff, the clearer your channel is going to be. So I'd have people work on, even if it's just seconds worth of time, of really like silencing that mind. So we have just nothing going on, space. And part of that is dropping into the heart center. So bringing our focus down to what I call our midline, to that heart space, that heart center, and really getting into that space of disconnecting your mind. You can't do two things at once, technically. Like I was one of those women that was like, I'm a multitasker. I can do anything that I want, all the things at once, but you really can't. So if you bring that focus and attention out of that head and into the body, it starts to silence the mind. Our job is to extend those periods of silence longer and longer and longer by learning how to control the mind, by learning how to really give it your full attention and to be able to understand it in order to bring that focus and attention down to your midline. Then the last thing that I would have people do is really work on raising their vibration. So, raising their vibration, you can do it in so many different ways, tapping into love, tapping into joy, eating healthier foods, really taking care of yourself, as well as really tuning into the energetics within inside of yourself. And really, the more you tap into them, the more you can actually work with them. And you can use energy to actually raise your energetic vibration so it expands beyond you. And that a lot of the times will help you to open your channels to receive information better. So those are the three things.
Are there techniques that you can share for the novice of how to, you say, get into your heart, quiet your mind? Are you using meditation? How do you quiet the mind? Number one. Number two, how do you teach somebody to get into their heart? And number three, how is there a technique that you use to raise somebody's vibration?
Yeah. So with the mind, I do use meditation, but somebody doesn't have to. So you can use a pre-recorded meditation. For my clients, I have them. And my meditations aren't just like walking you through something. They also help your energetics. So they're energy infused, which will help you to pull that mind down and silence that mind. But doing a meditation or even just focusing on the breath, you can do a meditation literally anywhere. Like if you're washing the dishes, you can keep focusing your mind like down into the heart space or just focus exactly on what you're doing. The idea is so the mind doesn't wander, the mind doesn't control us. So we're more in control of that mind. So you can do that. You can do even like a visualization where you're sitting outside, you just focus on the tree. Connect with that tree, allow that those thoughts to just kind of settle and go away. So keeping really present is a really great way to work on the mind as well. There's lots of different things that you can do with with the mind and silencing it. There's another technique that I learned from a woman years and years ago. Our mind really does respond to what we say, and that's why there's such like a long process of this thought, then this thought, then this. It's like it just keeps going. So, one of the things that you can do is as you're sitting with your mind, you can practice either visualizing like a little off switch on your mind, or even just saying to the mind, I'm asking my mind to shut off at this time. And you'll notice it will go silent for a couple seconds. And so, our job is to keep extending that silence as we're doing that. And again, we do that by being aware of what's going on in our mind, letting the thoughts go, come back to that silence. So sometimes it can involve journaling to get the chaos out first. It can involve looking at what we're really thinking and feeling and addressing it in order to give the mind that space to kind of expand.
And then how does somebody get into their heart?
Okay, so with the heart space, I actually find that the heart space, it does some people might not think this because the minds can be really crazy, but sometimes the heart space is actually harder because of the fact that heart space is where we hold some wounding. We can hold a lot of vulnerability and we can hold some protective energy. So the heart space is actually a little bit harder for people to get into, but it's also incredibly transformative when you can get into your heart space. So with that heart space, there's a couple things that you can do. For one, when the mind is silent, it's easier to get into the heart space. I always suggest working with the mind first and then going into the heart space, but whatever somebody feels really good. But even just putting your hands on your heart space and bringing your focus and attention. So if you were to almost like take your finger and have this awareness that your finger is right here, bring your finger all the way down to that heart space. If you bring your awareness down to that finger, it brings it down at least to the heart space area.
Yeah.
Then what we want to do is I ask my clients to focus on one thing in life that they know they love, they truly have love for. I do not care if it's a lobster dinner or a car that you drive. I don't care what it is. It can be your dog, it can be your kids, but it has to be something that you're unafraid to love. If there's like a fear around loving it or there's tension, what can happen is our heart space closes. All right, our idea of this is to get that heart space to open. So, no shame. You pick whatever it is that you love and you focus on that and you focus on that love feeling as your attention's on that heart space and your heart begins to open. And the more you can open that heart space, the more you put your focus and attention on it. It's like it's just this cycle that it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and expands. Um, Ideally, we also want to do like healing on the heart space. It'll help it to open better. And then the other thing is, which is actually a really powerful healing tool to open the heart space, is sitting with this focus and attention on a heart space and really repeating things such as like, I love you, Carrie, using your own name. It does something to really like open up that heart space and expand it even more when you're in the space of like, I love you, Carrie. I love you. Just like really feeling it and it will activate and open that heart space up.
The body's gonna follow what the brain's telling it, whether the brain believes it or not, and I always use the example of, you may be watching, like, Frozen 2, and
Yeah.
there's a sad part of the movie, and you find yourself getting weeping, then you think, "Wait a minute, this is an animated movie that's pretend, and here I am crying," but your body's following what your brain's showing it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah. Even if you don't
yeah.
want to. Yeah.
Exactly. And I love that you teach that the heart space needs to be open because all spirits are pure love.
Yes.
And I completely agree with you gotta get your vibration raised because I always say spirit doesn't communicate on the I feel crappy channels because the
Right.
vibration's too low. It's like
Yes.
you're listening to the country music station and they're whining about mama, the truck, and the dog, and you wanna be on on the classical music station or the even the disco music station. I mean, you can't listen to disco without being in a good mood. It's just you can't. It's not possible. So what do you do? I love these techniques. What do you do to get somebody into the vibration of spirit?
So one like to actual connect with them and be able to hear spirit. So it was one of the biggest struggles that I saw a lot of my clients having because what I have found is that people overthink it. Everyone overthinks it. You ask a question and our brain naturally wants to answer it. It just goes right to somebody's like, okay, so, what's going to happen next week? And your brain immediately goes into trying to figure out the answer to it. So, which is why we practice silencing the brain. But one of the things that I have found, which works phenomenally for most people, is that if we can keep our brain busy and we can raise our vibration, tap into our heart space, raise our vibration, then spirit's information comes in very effortlessly. It can, as long as we're not trying to get it. And so I was and when I was sitting with this, I was like, "Well, what can I do for people to keep their brains busy?" And there's 2 things that you can do. One, a little bit harder and a little bit annoying. The second one is phenomenal, and it created, this, like, little workbook to help people on all levels, whether they're just beginning or they're, like, master psychic level. One of them is as you ask a question, and remember, we wanna silence the mind, we wanna get out of that monkey mind, connect into the heart space, and really project our energy up and out because it takes it away from our own stuff. Because when we're connecting with spirit, it's not about our stuff that's in this human body, it's about the information that's coming to us. So, one of the things that you can do is as you're in this really great space, your vibrations raised, your mind is silent, your heart space is open, you ask a question. So, you might ask a question like, what program should I offer? Okay. I work with a lot of people in business. So, what program should I offer or what price? Then, what you want to do is you can literally just keep repeating something very simple in your head. What program should I offer? Like, without trying to get the answer, and you will hear spirit can come and speak to you because the mind is busy not trying to figure it out, just repeating something or program, 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 program. And all of a sudden, this information will come in, and it's like this influx of energy that will come in. That works for a lot of people, not everybody, because
Kinda like
some
a
people,
mantra? Kinda like
yeah,
a mantra?
you just
Yeah,
repeat something because it's keeping the active brain busy so the channels can receive information.
makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but the second thing that works literally for everybody is you grab a piece of paper. You get in the same space. And I always tell people to get into like a really comfortable space, quiet, they're not disturbed. They do some journaling to release the monkey mind. They drop into their heart space, expand their energy up, and then they grab that paper and they start writing. You just start writing. And you do I'm sorry, we'll back up a little bit. You invite your guides in or spirit in of the highest good, greatest, greatest of love. You invite spirit in. That's the premise here that we're communicating with spirit. So after you do that, you just start writing. You just start writing, not worrying about punctuation, not worrying about grammar, not worrying about if you're answering the question. And the writing keeps the active mind busy and the information just starts flowing, and you'll notice that you're starting to write messages from spirit, and you're starting to write things that you haven't consciously thought of. And because this is so powerful, what I've trained my clients to do, I created them this little it's called the Psychic Development Journal, and it is 2 pages, and what it does is it asks you to tune into your body. What is your body feeling? So, it is a journal to help you to develop the connection to your body, your spirit guides, your own soul, asking specific questions, and when my clients do that every single day, they're like, "You wouldn't believe it, the message I got is the exact message that you said later on this afternoon about, like, some energy of the day or something." They find that the information they need comes flowing through because they've opened themselves up to spirit.
Yeah. Automatic writing is what that's known as in some
Well,
circles.
automatic writing's a little bit different than this. Automatic writing is when a spirit comes through you and actually moves your hand. This one I call channel writing because you're in full control of your hand. Where the automatic writing, a spirit controls your hand. And where this one, you're in control, but the things, the thoughts that are coming in, the information that's coming in through your head and then to your hand is very much from spirit. And what my clients have said is that they can pick up their hand and stop at any time. Nothing's controlling them, but the information that's flowing in is things they never even thought of.
Yeah.
And that's what I love.
I do
Yeah.
too. That's great advice. I find it interesting too how we're raised in this, especially Western world, to overanalyze the crap out of everything. And I always tell my students, I say, stay out of the weeds. You don't need to know how this works. Just receive the information. Let it flow. You don't need I had somebody in my training last weekend who's a brilliant scientist at a very prestigious university doing medical research, and she's like, "Well, I'm left-brained. I don't know that I'm gonna be able to do this." I'm like, "Quit overanalyzing it. Let it flow. Everybody can do this. Stay out of the weeds." And so that, people hear me say, "Stay out of the weeds. You're just overanalyzing the crap out of it." We're saying the same thing. You're saying the same thing. Okay, so let's take it a step further. You say that you're a clear channel, which I'm using air quotes for those of you that are listening instead of watching. How do you determine that the information you're getting is exactly what it's intended as it goes through your human filter? How do you become a clear channel? How do you teach your students and clients how to become a clear channel? What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So for me, there's a couple ways and a couple things that I look for in order for being a clear channel. And part of this does require really knowing yourself. So one of the things that my clients really get into is really understanding the different ways and the different places within inside their own mind that information comes from. So I teach my clients that you have a knowledge section of your brain, you have an ego section of your brain, you have a desire section of your brain, and then you have kind of just a chatter, and then you have places where it can feel like you're receiving information. So I hear, see, feel. I do all of that. So I can hear my guides, and part of it does feel like it's coming from your own brain, even though it's not. So the more that we really understand, oh, that's where my ego chirps up and that's what my ego sounds like, you know that if information is coming from that area with that tone, with that vibration, it's not your guides. It's not your guides. So the more that you truly understand your own brain, and it does take time to really understand it, you can tell when it's something else that's speaking. And it has when I communicate with something, it has a very specific vibration, and it depends how it is. I have many different guides and many different things that I can communicate with. They all sound a little different. They use different words and they speak differently. And so by understanding that you're hearing something or seeing something outside of yourself is very important. So knowing that difference and really recognizing the energetics that come from your own brain versus the energetics that come from a different being or just energy source outside of yourself. We can do this with I'm a seer. So we do this with the visions as well. Your imagination will not look the same as a vision that's given to you. And so the more that you practice just imagining or visualizing something and you know what that looks like, then when you receive an image, you should be able to tell the difference, and you have to do your discernment. You have to do your due diligence on this. So when you're first starting out, you do have to overanalyze it a little bit because of the fact that I do want to know, especially for the women that I train and the men that I train, is that I want you to be certain in the information you're giving people. So you do need to know if this is coming from your own mind, your own thoughts, your own beliefs, versus is it coming from outside of yourself? Another really great thing, especially for me specifically when I'm channeling, I will have my own thoughts. I'll have a full on conversation. And the other day I was doing like an energy reading for my group. And I was like, there's this really strong manifestation portal between November 1st and November 11th. And every single time I said November 11th, one of my guides was like, it's November 15th. And I'm like, "Fine." And now so, like, I will say, I wanna say the 11th, he keeps saying it's the 15th, so we're gonna go with the 15th. So, I know what my own thoughts are, and I will say, "I wanna say this, they keep saying this, so we have to go with this." So, I know the difference between my own thoughts and my own beliefs versus what it is that they're telling me, and again, that just takes practice. It takes, doing your due diligence, and it really does take getting information, taking action on it, realizing it was wrong, or getting information and not taking action on it and realizing it was right for you to be able to say, wait a second, this is actually what it feels like when this information comes in. And that is a huge part. Practice is a huge part of psychic mastery. It really is.
Most important part,
Yes.
I think. Early on, my main spirit guide, Carrie, is a dead pope, Pope Clement the Sixth. And early on, when he first came in, I'd argue with him. And then the more I thought about it, I thought, really, Ryan, you're arguing with a dead pope. I mean, he's got access to universal intelligence. What are you doing? And then I learned all the advice that he was giving me. When I followed it, he was right. And so then I just gave it up. But early on, I did that and I was like, I can't do that because of this, this, and this, and this.
Yeah,
And
I did it too.
it
I would
does
argue with
take
my
practice.
guides, and I'm like, "Why do I have to?" I was arguing with them even recently. I'm a stubborn person, and they wanted me to book a flight at 5 o'clock at night, and I was like, "I don't wanna fly that late, like, I wanna fly at 2 o'clock in the afternoon," and they're like, "No, you're gonna fly at 5," and I'm like, "I don't want to." So I kept trying to buy a ticket at 2 o'clock. My card kept getting declined. I'm like, "It's impossible," and they're like, "No," and so I finally gave in, and I was like, "Fine, I'll buy the 5 o'clock." About 3 weeks later, when I went to go on the trip, we had a blizzard, and the airport didn't open till 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was like, "Fine, you were right." And it's not that I didn't think they were right, but I was just like, "I don't understand. Can't we just make an exception and I fly earlier in the day?" So it's funny, and I actually enjoy it because it makes it feel like it's more normal. Like it's a real interaction you would have, and I want people to feel that way. Like it is a real interaction that you would have, and I do believe you should create relationships with your guides. That's how you get to know them better and you get more information that way. It's like a regular talking to somebody, if you don't create a relationship, then you might not trust them as much. You might be a little bit more standoffish. So we do want to create that relationship with our guides as well.
Well, the other thing that I realized, and it sounds like you have as well, is, they have such a great sense of humor. And so Pope Clement always shows up with his hat on, his Pope hat on. And, and after several years that I'm like, I know who you are. Really? Do you need to wear the hat? He goes, and he always tells me this, Carrie, to say, it looks good though, don't you think? It's
You're like,
just
yes, it looks very well. Yeah.
hilarious. And what I find too is that at this stage, after doing it for so long, like you, it's like, okay, you know everything. I know my own little piece of the puzzle. So if you're telling me to take a flight at 5, okay, I'm just gonna trust it.
Yeah,
And
and that is so true. I think that statement right there has helped me so much because when I'm channeling, I will go in and be like, "I don't know anything, so show me." Like, when we do that, when we get in this space of, "I don't know anything, so show me," it's not like a lot of people will say, "Oh, it's giving your power away if you don't think you know anything," but as a psychic, you need to because we know a fraction of the information that we can receive, and so when you go in with this idea like, "I don't know, you tell me," you get a lot more information.
well, and it's spirit working through us and with us to help our clients. So it's, we're part of the equation, but they're the ones that have all of the information. And I find too that it makes it fun, especially when I'm talking with somebody who's bereaved because they've lost a loved one, especially a child. That's so awful, regardless if the child's 70 and my client's 95 or
Yeah,
whatever. And it's been my experience, I'd love to hear your take on this, where oftentimes they'll come in, the spirit will come in with what their first or second statement will be hilarious. And what
yeah,
they're doing is they're trying to let their loved one know, "I'm great. This is fabulous. You don't need to be in pain. You don't need to suffer over this." And they get them laughing.
yeah,
And then they can have a it's easier for them to have a conversation because again, spirit doesn't communicate on the I feel crappy channels because the vibration's too low and grief is a low vibration. I agree with you also on the that emotion, I say, is like an internal GPS system. And it helps us know, okay, are we in alignment with spirit? Or are we out of alignment with spirit? Because if you're feeling bad and you're thinking, oh, I'm not getting this, I'm never going to get this, whatever, and you're in fear, you're kicked off the channel. It's been my experience. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. I think that people who are in a really bad place or having a bad day, if you're having a bad day and you're just in that, like, negative Nancy kind of aspect, that it's like you wanna shift your energy because then the information comes in much clearer. Otherwise, you clog your filters. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Negative
Yeah.
Nancy. I've
Yeah.
heard
I'm
of
sorry.
Debbie
If anyone's name
Downer.
is Nancy, I'm not trying to offend you, but it's one of those things.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a good one. I heard Debbie Downer. I haven't heard
Yeah.
negative Nancy
Yeah.
before. That's great. You say you were born psychic.
Mhm.
When and how did you realize that you were different from your siblings, perhaps, or peers? And did you grow up in a spiritual family? Tell us about that.
Okay. So I did not grow up in a spiritual family at all, but I also didn't grow up in a religious family. Like, we went to a congregational church when I was really little, but it was like I can remember sitting there and listening to some, stories of the Bible or, different things that the pastor, it was called a pastor, was sharing. And I'd be like, I don't think that's true. Or I would just sit there and just have a feeling, but we didn't go to church very often. So I didn't grow up spiritual. I didn't grow up with confirmation that what I was seeing and feeling and experiencing was true. Every single time I would say something to my mom, like my mom still lives in my childhood home, and there's absolutely a spirit there. Her name is Gloria. And I would see her all the time. And even to this day, my mom's like, yeah, she is. Like I can feel her. I know she's here. And there's always been weird things, but my mom was really busy. So anytime I said something to her, she would be like, it's just your imagination, or, "Oh, okay, you had a great dream," or, "Oh, okay, okay, that's fine," like, probably didn't even hear what I said. So, I just kinda grew up feeling completely normal. It was it was just, like, everyday life of I thought everything that I was seeing, feeling, and hearing, everybody else was. I didn't think it was different. And then when I was about 27 or 28, And I had little glimpses of this before that, but about 27 or 28, I remember having a conversation with one of my cousins, and I was really upset because I was going through a divorce. I was young, I had 3 kids, and a lot of things had happened in my life, and I said, "I don't even know why I'm so stressed about this because obviously we always know what's gonna happen in our life, so why am I acting like I'm surprised?" And she was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And I was like, "Well, I've seen all of these things. We always get to see what happens in our life, so we shouldn't be surprised about it." And she was like, "We don't see what happens in our life. What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Yeah, like, Madison being born when I was 19 or I got pregnant at 19, I had her when I was 20. I had cancer when I was 26. And then I got divorced when I was, going through divorce at about 28, 29. And she was like, no, like, what are you talking about?" I was like, "No, I've seen all of those. You haven't seen everything that's happened in your life?" And she was like, "No." And I remember just sitting there being like, "That's weird." Like, knowing that like, this was boiling up. Like, I'd been seeing things and hearing things and being like, "Am I psychic? Am I not? That's so weird. Of course I'm not psychic. You have to be, like, born it," and all this kind of stuff. So it was sitting in my mind. And then when I was, and back in 2014, I was in the most amazing relationship. And I was working full time at a business that I'd helped grow. And I always had these ideas in business. And I woke up one morning and found my fiance dead.
Oh, heavens.
And, um, and it completely shattered my entire life as well as he had he had been telling me that he wasn't feeling well. And as he was saying that to me, he would be like, "I feel like I have, like, heartburn." And I'd say, "Okay, but are you sure it's heartburn?" And I just had this terrible feeling, like something terrible was gonna happen to him. And I was one of those, like, no stress moms, like, if somebody felt like, "You're fine, get up." Like, I had 3 kids, really young, and I was just one of those, like, nothing ever bothered me, nothing ever worried me. And this really worried me, and we had been away all weekend, and he had been having these, like, chest throat burning incidents, as he would call them. We went to bed on a Saturday night, and I woke up Sunday morning and had felt him get out of bed and was just like, he must just be going to get water, something to drink because we didn't have our children. And, um, and so I fell back to sleep, and when I woke up again, about an hour later, he hadn't come back to bed. And so I got out of bed and I heard very clearly, "Mike is dead." And I was like, "Why am I thinking these crazy things? Like, stop, 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 stop." And I went and used the bathroom. I went downstairs and he was on the couch, unresponsive on the couch.
Oh,
And
girl.
I
I'm
had to
so
call.
sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, it was the hardest thing I've ever been through,
I can't even
ever,
imagine. Yeah.
ever been through. And from that moment on, it was my world shattered. Like everything we had ever planned was done. Every single thing. And it was like life moved in slow motion. Like in that time, I had to call 911. I had to do chest compressions on him. It was like this horror, like you watch it on TV. It was like this horror story that was playing out. And through while I was doing it, and I can remember some things, but I also remember this huge piece, like calming feeling coming over, like, it's okay. And then I get into a freak out mode again. And so after he passed, it was this drive for me to figure out what happens when you die. I wasn't religious. I wasn't raised religious. And I was like, there's no way that this man can just exit my life and I never see him again and I never talk to him again. Like, where did he go? And I went into this deep dive journey of really understanding the afterlife and what happened. And from a very early time, like I can remember sitting in the hospital with him. His family lived far away. And so I had to stay in the hospital with him until we weren't married, till his mom could come and sign like the papers to release him and make decisions. So I sat there for 8 hours by his side. And there were so many times that I would like jump up because it felt like he was standing right next to me. And I was like, I'm going crazy. I'm going crazy. So I ended up really deep diving into spirituality and I went to see a medium and I went to see a shaman first and then a medium. And both of them were like, "You're psychic. Like he's telling us he will not communicate with us. He will only communicate with you." And he refused to communicate with any mediums, any psychics, anything because he kept saying, "She is the only one I will speak to. I can only communicate with her, and I will only communicate with her." And I begin to realize everything that I had ever experienced in life, I experienced it differently than anybody else did. And that, like, I could see him, I could feel him. And again, like you said, grief is one of the lowest emotions. And so it was like this battle between being in this grief and being able to feel him. Like I could feel a physical touch like on my cheek. Like he worked so hard to get me to feel him and to acknowledge him. He made me I went to 3 different mediums before I was finally like, "Fine, I'll do it myself," because he wouldn't speak to them. He just kept saying, and they would confirm and they would say, they'd tell me all this information about him, but they would say, "He is saying you have to speak to him. You have this gift." Um, and once I decided like, "Okay, fine, I'll do it," I think a huge part for me was that I was 33 years old. I hadn't been psychic my whole life. And now all of a sudden I'm gonna be like, my fiance died and I can see him. I sound legit crazy. That's what was going through my head. Like I sound crazy. And I come from a very, like corporate background, very, like strategy and this and logic and all this kind of stuff. And now I'm like, oh yeah, I can talk to dead people. And so I had to work through that. But I realized really early on that a lot of the things I've heard in my head, air quotes in my head my whole life, or saw or felt or just knew it was my psychic gifts, and I passed them off on everybody does this way. But I soon learned that they did not do that way. So,
Yeah, yeah. I was the same way when Pope Clement came in and he said, and I had been studying this stuff because I didn't do this from you know, out of the oven. I learned how to do this stuff in my mid-30s is when I started on it. And when Pope Clement came in and he said, "You're supposed to teach the world what happens when somebody dies." I'm like, "I'm a businesswoman. I'm not doing that. People will think I'm nuts." And I just said, "No, I'm not doing that." So I completely understand what you're talking about.
yeah, you, like, feel this pull inside, like, you're supposed to do it, but then you're like, all of my acquaintances in the business world are, like, bankers and doctors and attorneys and realtors, and I'm like, "Hey, guys, I talk to dead people now." Like, it's just a weird feeling, but you're supposed to do it, and there's almost this feeling of no other option but doing it.
Well, I was giving a talk at a business conference. It was all C-suite level executives in Austin, Texas, and it was primarily men. There may have been 2 women in the room, and it was right after I finally got the golden ovary courage. You know what I'm talking about. Guys have brass balls, girls have golden ovaries, to put yourself out there. And so the AskJulieRyan.com site launches, and I'm thinking, "Okay, please, God, don't let anybody see this while I'm at the conference." So, of course, I finished with my talk, about business stuff. And this guy comes up to me with his iPad and he goes, "Is this you?" And I was say, "Duh, that's my picture. Yeah." And I'm thinking, "Oh God, I'm going to get hammered on this. He's going to give me so much grief about this." And he said, "Well, I'd like to know more. Can we sit together at lunch?" And I'm smiling, and inside I'm going, "Oh, Lord have mercy." And I said, "Yeah, sure." And I'm thinking, "Oh, prepare yourself." So, long story short, I sat at a table of 8. It was 7 guys and me. All we talked about was woo-woo. They didn't wanna talk about business. They didn't wanna talk about the conference. They didn't wanna talk about what my presentation was. They only wanted to talk about woo-woo. And I said, "Okay, God. Okay, I got the message. All right, I'll go forward with this." And that was really the thing that and I needed something. It sounds like you did too. I needed something fairly definitive to get me to the place to say, "Okay, I'm gonna put myself out there." And now, after doing it for so long, I don't care what anybody thinks. They wanna talk about it, great. If they don't, fine. What do you wanna talk about? Talk to you about whatever. And are you in the same place with
Yeah,
that?
yeah, and I did need something very definitive, like, 10 years ago, I would have called myself this skeptical psychic. Like, I was just like, "Prove it. Show me again. Show me another time." Like, I needed even with Mike, when I was communicating with Mike, I remember I worked with a medium for a while, like, I had ended up with her, and she's like, "He won't talk to me, but he says you can channel for me. Can you answer some of my questions?" And I remember I'd paid for a session, I remember just being like, "Sure, I'll answer your questions." Like, I ended up doing for her, but her and I would sit with each other and practice. And I remember so many times she'd be like, "Just ask Mike." I'm like, "I know, but, like, what if it's me making it up?" Like, I constantly would say those things. I needed it to be really definitive. And I will tell you what, I dragged my feet on starting my business, and I was so frustrated, and I was like, "I can't call myself a psychic," and they were like, "You have to call yourself a psychic," and we went back and forth. My business maybe was making 1,000, some months, no money. The most I made in a month was maybe $2,000. The month I started calling myself a psychic, I made $10,000, and it's only grown from there. And I was like, "Fine, you were right." Like, and you have to just embrace it. And now I'm just like, if you don't like me, you don't like me, whatever. Like, this is just who I am. Yeah, it's just who I am.
You're
So
like, "Guys, I need some help. I can't take care of 3 kids on $1,000 a month."
I know exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. It was
yeah,
very stressful in that moment.
and
Yes.
and having the courage to do it as well.
Well,
Yeah.
yes, and I will be honest with you, for me, it was a lot less courage and a lot more. I had just come off of Mike dying, so I was like, "It can't get worse than this." Like, that's all I always said to myself was, "It can't get worse than this, like, I don't even care, like, I'm just gonna do it." I didn't care if I ruined my credit. I didn't care if people thought I was dumb. I didn't care if it didn't work because I was still in that space of, "This isn't the life I wanted, so if it doesn't work, whatever." So, I always, and even to this day, if something's really challenging, I'm like, "You know what? I made it through Mike dying. I can do this." So it's more of like I would go into that. But yeah, there is a level of courage and just kind of like go for it. Like you
Yeah.
have to just go for it
Well,
to be
you're
able to
being
do it.
led. Me
Yeah.
too. We're being led. I live in the South, darling. That's what they say down here. You being led. So, all right. So it sounds like the way that you developed your gifts, Mike was really the catalyst for you to take it to the next level. And then you worked with other mediums and psychics to help you develop your gifts. Is that
No, it's really just primarily Mike. The only thing I did with another psychic was she would quiz me on stuff, or she would say, "I'm thinking of a number," and I would do it. I've not had a single person teach me other than spirit. Anytime I would find somebody, I would teach them. So anything I've ever learned, I've never taken another course from somebody. It is just, and when even with this specific friend, I would tell her what to quiz me on and tell her how to quiz me. And she'd be like, "Okay, they're showing me something, so now you have to tell me exactly what they're showing me," type thing. So I am totally 100% self-taught, and Mike was 100% the catalyst of it, for
I
sure.
love it. I love it.
Yeah,
So are
yeah.
you in another relationship now? Are you married? Did he send you somebody?
You can send me somebody if you'd like, but no, I'm
Okay.
not married, I'm not in a relationship. No, I'm not at this
Yeah,
time.
ask
Yeah,
him. Hi,
yeah.
Mike.
I know, I know. I've had a couple, I had one other serious relationship, but, yeah, not right now,
My
so
girlfriend's husband had cancer and suffered for about 3 years. They've been married, I don't know, 30 some years. And he told her before he passed, and I'm telling you this story because this is something for you to hold on to. 'Cause you're too fabulous to not have somebody fabulous in your life. So her husband, Frank, her name's Deb, her husband, Frank, said, "I'm gonna send you a guy to keep you company till we can be together in heaven again." And she's called me going, "It's the morphine. I know, it's the morphine." And I said, "Well, just listen to him." She said, "Well, how will I know he's from you?" And Frank said, "Look for the mermaid." And they live in Florida. And she's like, "Look for the mermaid? What the heck's that mean?" I know this is the morphine. So Frank passes. A few months later, somebody sets her up. She goes out to lunch with this guy. I get a call afterwards. Nice guy, wonderful, all that kind of stuff. They go out to dinner a couple more times. He's a retired pilot from Delta, used to fly international routes, and he has a plane. And he said, you know what, you want to see my plane? And I said, is that kind of like you want to see my Rembrandt in the bedroom? No, but he's taking her to his hangar. And so they go to the hangar. I promise you, girl, on the tail of the plane is painted a mermaid.
oh my gosh, if
Oh
that
my
is not
God.
the most beautiful, I just got chills. If
That's
that's not
right.
the most beautiful sign,
I
wow.
know. So, point being, ask Mike for a sign. Ask Mike to help send somebody amazing. So, cut to the chase. They got married a couple of years ago. They've been living this amazing life together. And Frank sent into her.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
so
amazing. I
when
know
you're
when
ready,
Mike first
ask Mike.
passed well, when he first passed, I just had no desire to connect with somebody else, and then I spent so many years building my business and being with the kids, but yeah, I think you're right, I think it's about time. Actually, one of my clients today was like, "Girl, I've been praying for you to find the most amazing man." She's, in China right now, and she was on Kuan Yin's mountain. She's like, "I was saying prayers for you," so it was super cute. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and now this will go out, and so bazillions of people will see it, so you probably be having guys sent to you from all
Maybe we shouldn't
over.
have said this.
Yeah. No, no, no. I was led to talk about it with you. Okay. Do you believe that anybody can learn to do this?
100%. I believe every single person is psychic. They just do not know how to do it yet. Yet. Yeah, I totally do.
You do a lot of work, and this is fascinating to me because I do some of the same thing, but not as much as you. Mine's more general, but I'm a businesswoman and an inventor and a manufacturer. So, I'm interested in the business stuff. How do you help somebody become a channel, and how does that help their business? Whether they own the business or whether they're an employee, whether they're working on a manufacturing line or whether they're in the C-suite. Does it help everybody? How does that work? Give us a couple of examples, if you would.
So, yeah, this is such a great question because one of the things that I see, which is a misconception, is that if you have psychic abilities, you just have to do psychic readings. And that's not true. That would mean that every single person on the planet has psychic abilities. It's our sixth sense. It's our ability to connect and understand energetics. So, everyone on the planet is not supposed to be a psychic and just do psychic readings, So you're supposed to be able to access your psychic abilities, be able to communicate with energetics and understand and get messages, but use them in a way that you're supposed to use them. And one of my gifts, and this, I don't know if it's so much a psychic gift, but just one of my gifts is to be able to see exactly how somebody can use their psychic abilities no matter what industry they are in. So worked with people in the style industry, marketing industry. I've worked with people in medical, construction, food industry, and your psychic gifts can enhance anything that you're doing. So think about it. Like I was just on a call with a doctor and one of my clients, and she was just looking at like changing practices and building out her own practice. And she's like, I just don't want to hire the wrong people. I'm like, girl, that's why you have me. She hasn't opened her psychic abilities yet. We more work on like direction for her business and that kind of stuff. But when you're sitting interviewing somebody or you're being interviewed for a position or a job or something, by being able to read that person's energy and really understand them at their core, you can put them in the best possible position inside your company. You can know if something's aligned. You can know if you're purchasing the right house because of the fact of the energetics involved. If you're, I actually have a child who's in med school and she's an energy reader. So here's the situation I'm a medical intuitive as well. I can do everything in the psychic world. So there's been multiple times that I've taken my children to the hospital and I know what's wrong with them. And I will say, this is what's wrong. And the hospital will tell me, that is not wrong. That is not wrong. That is not wrong. I remember one time my daughter had a kidney infection. She had a high fever, wicked pain, and they did an ultrasound and they're like, no, she's fine. Her kidneys are fine. We don't see anything. They did a urine test. They did everything. 2 days later, we ended up back in the emergency room with she had to do several rounds of antibiotics because her kidney infection was so bad. And I was like, I just said she has a kidney infection. So like, or I had another daughter who broke her finger and the doctor swore to me there was no break. I brought her to a specialist about a week later once insurance said we could, about a week and a half later, and they were like, it's broken. And I was like, I know, I told the doctor that, but they're like, no. So our psychic abilities can help us to see things beyond what strategy would show us, what logic would show us, what tests can show us. And that is such a benefit because we see the unseen. And there's so much in this life that is unseen. So no matter what industry you're in, even if you're a stay-at-home mom, my gifts have helped me raise my children and to help me to be there for them as well as let them navigate their own journey in life because of my psychic abilities in ways that I never would have been able to show up for them had I not used my psychic gifts or been psychic. So you can literally use it in anything that you do. Anything.
Right, and I think people believe or they've been told that channeling is only with spirit, only with dead people's spirits. You can channel with a tree, you can channel with a baby that's not verbal yet. I mean, how helpful is that? As a mom with a new baby and the baby's wailing and you're trying to figure out what the heck's wrong, you've fed them, you've changed them, whatever, and yet they're still upset, and to be able to communicate telepathically with that child's spirit is so helpful to do that. Yeah. Before we had Waze and GPS, I lived in LA. I used to use it to go, "Okay, should I take the service streets or should I take the highway?"
Yeah.
Type of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so true, like, I could share hundreds of stories, like, I channeled with this woman's dog once who was so anxious, she's like, "The dog's upset and blah, blah." I'm like, "She wants her red ball that you put in the closet." And she's like, "Oh my god, I did because she wouldn't leave me alone, like, 3 weeks ago." I'm like, "Go get her red ball, she just wants her red ball." The dog was perfectly fine after. Like, it's things like that, they seem so little, but when something can't communicate with you, but they can communicate through energetics, it just changes everything, and you can communicate with anything. Anything. Like, this pen, this book, anything holds and everything holds energetics. If you learn how to read energy and communicate with energy, not just guides and spirits, you can understand the world very differently than you might understand the world right now.
I agree. I find it fascinating too that trees in particular communicate with other trees through their roots. Like if a tree is diseased or has something going on that is less than optimal, the other trees can send it nutrients and whatever they need, vitamins. I don't know. Do trees need vitamins? I guess
Yeah,
they probably
I think
do.
they do. Yeah,
And
minerals, right?
and
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so through their root system, so is that an energetic thing? I tend to think, yes, it is.
Yeah, I tend to think it is, and it's also like nature works so beautifully with itself. So nature is always regenerating, it's always giving, it's always working so beautifully and there's this beautiful system and it has to part of that system is energetics. Like think about the tides and the moons and all this stuff that happens, so much of it is energetics. Or when, you know, animals bring messages so often and that's such a beautiful thing when you're sitting there and all of a sudden there's, a hummingbird sitting on, the arm of the chair next to you. Or, my daughter texted me the other day. She's like, I feel like Snow White just got dive bombed by an owl. And it's like, okay, that's a message, like, yes, that's cute. Oh, you just got dive bombed by an owl. But like, that's a message. And so when we start to pay attention to that, like, there's so much energy in nature. Yeah.
Yeah. Did she ask the owl what his message was or her message?
No, she was like, "Mom, what does the owl want me to know?" No, my kids are they're very psychic, but they're lazy. So, like, the other day, she's like, "Are there ghosts in our house?" And there always are. I just channel with so many beings and for so many people. And I was like, I'm sure. Why? I don't know why." She's like, "There's somebody in my room who won't leave me alone. Can you just ask them to leave?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's fine." Like, the spirits interact with my children all the time.
Yeah.
All
Oh,
the time.
well, speaking of which, tell us about
Yeah.
Gloria, who's
Oh,
still in your mom's house.
yeah.
Is
So
Gloria like, is she Revolutionary War age or what's the story
she
on
is.
Gloria?
Yeah, she's more Revolutionary War age
That I was
and
getting.
yep,
Yeah.
and she very much is like the matriarch of the house. So she stays with the house but she is very, motherly and nurturing over my mom. So she did interact with us a little bit as children, but I never felt like she was trying to mother me. She was just kind of there, but she very much has a connection with my mom, and that's really who she does a lot of her overseeing on, but if my mom were to move out, Gloria wouldn't move, she stays with the house. It's very clear she just stays in that house. She's not she doesn't mess with things. She kind of just is there, like, overseeing and being a part of it, and she really does like to be a part of, like, the family. I always see her at family events, but it's funny because the house has an addition onto it that my parents had built. She doesn't go into the addition.
What's the age of the main part of the house, the original part?
So the main part of the house was moved there in the early 1800s. So, but it came from a different place. So, but there were other small buildings on that property. So, but it was 1800s. So, yeah.
So that was my question. Did she come with the house or was she on the property that the house was brought to?
I think she was on the property that the house
That's
is
what I'm
brought to.
getting to.
Yep. Yeah,
That's what
she was
I'm
on the
getting as
property.
well. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing her with one of those, like, Betsy Ross caps on.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, and always wears a dress. She's always got the same dress on, but she always has a dress on. Yeah. It's very much, it's very much like Revolutionary War type thing. She's always totally done up. Yeah.
That's what
But
I
she's
was seeing
super
too.
sweet, like, I don't know, she's never been afraid, and it's funny because she oftentimes doesn't even come downstairs. Again, the house is very old, and she will oftentimes hover just on it's in this house, it's 3 full floors. 3, like, main floor, there's no basement, so main floor, bedroom floor, and then the attic is a full floor with a regular stairwell up to it. And she oftentimes will stay in between the 2nd and 1st floor just watching the 1st floor, but her main thing is 2nd and 3rd floors where she kinda stays. Yeah.
I love it. Were you the first one to identify her in your
Yes.
family? And
Yeah.
she told you her name was
Yeah,
Gloria?
she told me her name was Gloria. Yeah, when I had asked her, she was like, "My name is Gloria," and yeah, I saw her every night. My bedroom happened to be the room right across from the 3rd set of the 3rd floor stairs. So, and there was a door there, but every single night, she would, like, walk down the stairs and walk through the halls of the 2nd floor, and every night I would see her, and she was not scary to me. She never came into my room. She would stand at the door at times, but in the 3rd floor was, my playroom, and I played up there all the time, and she always was there when I was playing up there. You just felt like this motherly figure behind you, but again, anytime I said something, my mom was just like, "You're just imagining it," kinda thing, so I just was like, "Okay, she's probably not there, it's just my imagination," type thing.
So how did your mom get to the point where she believed really that Gloria was her spirit was in the house?
So, my mom really when I went on my deep spiritual journey after Mike had passed, I was sharing my journey with my mom a lot, and then my mom started to like, she would hear these other I had seen 3, a shaman, a medium, and a psychic who had been like, you're psychic," and she had sat in or heard the recording of those, and so she was like, "Oh my god, like, you can do it too," and I think in the beginning, she was a little bit like, "Nah, can she actually do this?" But then she would start asking me questions. Like, I remember one time she called me. She's like, "Is my washing machine broken?" And I was like, "I don't know. Call a technician. Like, I'm not a washing machine technician, but I heard yes. Yes, you're gonna need a new washing machine. Okay, goodbye." Like she would call me for weird things. Or, one time she has chickens, like laying hens, and she's like, "I think the dog stole a chicken." I'm like, "She didn't steal it. Like she did not, and the chicken's not dead. It's not, and your dog did not take this chicken." And the chicken ended up coming back, and as it came back, like or right before it came back around that time, my mom saw that a hawk was taking the chickens. And so she was like, "You're right, it wasn't Miley," and the chicken did come back. So she would ask me those questions, and I think when I started answering them for her and kind of sharing, like, the things that I knew as a child, she was like, "Yeah, it all makes sense." So and then there I was like, "Oh, and by the way, Gloria lives here," and she was like, "Oh." And so many things that I had shared with her about Gloria and things that Gloria had done, she was like, "Yes, I feel that," or, "I wake up at night feeling like somebody's standing in the doorway," that kinda stuff, so
So
I
does
think it was
she
just
communicate
confirmation.
with Gloria now too? Or just
She
through you?
doesn't. Yeah, she doesn't. She used to do a little bit of, like, journal writing and channeling that way, and she would, talk a lot to her angels and stuff like that, and actually, unfortunately, right about 2 weeks after Mike passed, her mother had passed.
Oh, geez.
So I did share a lot of messages with her about her mom and from her mom and that kind of stuff, and she would say, "I think my mom is saying this," and she'd be right. So, but she doesn't really do it.
Yeah. She's
It's
got
not been a
you.
major.
She's
Yeah,
got
yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And it's so funny because our families see us in a certain way, because they've known us our whole lives and they're going, "Yeah, she can't do that." And I used to get that and then I'd nail stuff like you and they'd be like, "Oh, well, maybe she really can do this." And now it's like, "Hey, do your thing." Is what my brother says. Do your thing.
Do that thing that you do or talk to those your guys that you talk to and let me know. Yes. People will say just weird things like that, and I'm just like, "Yeah, okay, cool."
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
same thing. You also brought up a thing about a portal at the beginning of the month here in November of 2024. Tell us more about that.
So one of the things that I do, I absolutely love doing this, and, I do it every year. I've done it since 2016, I think, is I do an entire year energy reading. So, in November, I will sit down and do everything that's coming for 2025, what we need to know, what you can be aware of. I'll do a general overview of the entire year, and then it will go month to month to month to month. This is what you're going to feel. This is what you're going to experience. This is what's going to happen. And so I also do it. I do it in November. People, it's a 2-hour event. People listen to it all year long. I will even listen to it again and be like, "Oh my God, it's so spot on. I said this and blah, blah, blah." But I also do it every year. So every month, I mean, I'm sorry. I do it every single month for my private community. And I'll say, okay, so this is what's happening and this is what you can expect. So when I did November's, there is a manifestation portal that is open right now between I kept wanting to say, November 1st and November 11th, but they keep telling me it does extend to November 15th. We're in this concentrated energy of, like, really pure, powerful manifestation. And whatever it is that you're focused on, whatever you're speaking about, whatever is coming to you is going has the ability to be manifested rapidly. But that also means if you're sitting around here worrying about your business failing or whatever, you're something happened to your dog, doesn't matter what it is, that can be manifested very, very quickly too. So it's not just the good manifestations, it's everything. So we're in a very potent period. And actually, 2024 in entirety has been a very potent period of using and understanding your gifts and your abilities that everybody has. I'm not talking necessarily psychic, but our gifts and abilities as a soul here on earth and our power and our connection to energetics and our ability to create our life. And so that's part of what we're experiencing right now is this awareness of what it is that we're manifesting and creating and the power that we have and how quickly that works. So, on all levels, people are beginning to understand the power that they have over their own life. And so that's that period of window. But yeah, I do this every month and I do a big one every year. It's something I've done for 8 years now. I love it. It's so fun.
So basically, be cognizant of your thoughts because
Correct.
thoughts create your reality,
Yes.
and thoughts don't have a meaning until we give them a meaning. And so all thought has a frequency like every spirit, like every tree, every desk, every whatever, all has a frequency on that. With these readings, it sounds like it's generalized. It's not individual for each person. It's more of a generalized thing. And then if you have a client that wants something more individualized, can you break that down and go do a deeper dive?
Yeah, so I do a universal energy reading, so it's what everyone's gonna be feeling. So it's a universal energy. So, some people do like, they'll do like an astrological reading. So they'll say like Mars is here or whatever. I don't know any of them. I have no idea. But I read the energetics of it. So it's what every single person's going to be feeling or experiencing. But you're right, like just what you said with this portal of manifestation, some people are gonna manifest much faster than others, so everyone experiences it a little bit differently, but this is what you want to focus on. So I do the general one, and then I also do a ton of personal ones. And I do personal the same thing. I do your year overview. What is this focus of this year? What is the main theme of this year for you? What is your soul looking to experience? What's your business going to do? Your health, all this stuff. And then I will go month to month to month in important events that happen in that month that are very specific to them. So, like meeting people, launching a program, maybe like a child needing your attention. One of my clients just messaged me because she's like, "You said I was gonna get a car in September." And I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "And I kept telling you my husband was gonna buy it for me." Excuse me. And I was like, "Yeah." And I kept saying he wasn't. And she's like, "Yeah, you're right. He didn't. And I bought it." And she didn't end up taking delivery of it till October. But she's like, "Close enough. But you were right. He didn't buy it. I did." So I'll do things like that. Some are very fun, some things that I share during those, but a lot of them are very important to your spiritual growth, your business, your purpose, like what's unfolding in your life. So yeah, I do both.
Does everybody come in with a purpose just for them in each lifetime? Have you come up with kind of an overall opinion of that?
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the things that I've done, have you ever heard of, like, human design or gene keys or stuff like
I
that?
have, yeah.
Yep. So, none of those ever resonate with me, even, like, my zodiac sign, they just don't resonate with me, so I sat down a couple years ago and I channeled, with Source, this thing called soul theory. And what Source showed me is that every single person has come into this life with a purpose, both personal purpose, so as well as a global purpose. So a personal purpose is like things you're working through, lessons you're experiencing, situations you have to have, like the main focus of this life and the ascension process and what you're doing. But the global purpose is what I call a soul designation. And so there are 5 different main purposes on this planet as to what people are here to do, and that's everyone falls into one of those 5 categories. And then that can look very different. Like one of the designations is healers of the planet. Well, that can include doctors, it can include healers, it can be people that trigger other people. They gave me like all of these descriptions. And so I have learned that souls come in for a global purpose. Excuse me. As well as souls come in for an individual purpose. And it's amazing because one of the things that I've seen, and we're getting closer and closer, we're working more and more toward that, maybe not getting closer yet, but we are meant to come together as a global community, not just like the community in your neighborhood or the community in your own country, but we are supposed to be coming together as a global community instead of this separation as we advance and get more technology and expand and our awareness is increased, we're actually supposed to be coming closer and closer and closer together as a unit of one. So everybody's purpose kind of helps and supports everybody else's purpose. And so you have both. You have a global one and a personal one. I read people's blueprints, like their soul blueprints, as to why they're here and what they're supposed to do, and their main purpose in this life and what that looks like, as well as their own purpose in this life.
And that's so fascinating, and I'm with you on the astrology thing. I love hearing about it, but Pluto's 3rd moon in my 2nd Saturn house, I'm like, "Okay, just give me the bottom line."
Yeah, I can't even remember. I'm like, if you wanted me to list the planets, I might not even be able to do that for you, like, it's just not my thing. Yeah.
Right, me too, but I'll go to somebody or I'll talk to somebody, I'm fascinated to hear what they have to say, and certainly all that's one aspect of the channeling of the information. It's one methodology that's been used since the beginning of time. So has reading the tea leaves, so has, whatever. In every culture, this stuff's been going on, and I think in the last 150 years or so, it's been undercover a lot of the time because people are going, "Oh, yeah, well, I don't want anybody to know it." But, if I have a consult with you, it's confidential, right? Well, yeah, it's confidential, so nobody needs to know. But good. Yeah, every ruler, every president, pretty much, they all, they're getting advice somehow, whether it's through the power of prayer or whether it's through astrology or somebody like you or like me, same thing.
Yeah, I
It's
totally
all
agree. There's even all those people, like, years ago, people talked about manifestation, and then they kinda stopped. A lot of people did, but every single person, especially the leaders of our world, are absolutely connecting with something. They're getting
they're all
information.
doing it, every
Absolutely.
one of them. Yeah,
Absolutely.
every one of them. And you think about it, all the great holy books, they're all channeled. Everything's channeled. All books, all music, all whatever, inventions, all of it's channeled. So, people are doing it, they're just not aware that they're doing it.
Right, and they're doing it in different ways, and it's funny because for some people, prayer is acceptable, but manifestation isn't, and I'm like, "It's the same thing, we're just calling it something different," you know? Or, like, they'll wake up and be like, "God told me this," and I'm like, "Oh, I was talking to my guides," and they're like, "You shouldn't do that," and I'm like, "Okay, it's the same thing," like, it's we're still receiving messages. I think it's just what you feel comfortable with in your way of explaining it and doing it. Yeah,
Was God sitting in the Barca lounger next to you in the family room watching TV while he was telling you to do stuff?
I know, yeah.
No, I couldn't see him. Oh, you were talking with God's spirit. I see. So you've been communicating with spirit, so you're channeling. No, it's not the same thing, but yes, it is.
It's
Yeah,
totally the
I
same.
love
It's
that.
just so many different ways to explain what
Yeah.
we do.
I
Yeah.
agree. Tomato, tomato, right?
Yes.
Same thing. Last question. Why do we incarnate?
Such a good question. So, one of the things that I used to believe is that we incarnate because this is like school, we have to learn a lesson, but I don't actually like that's part of it, but a huge part of incarnation is for the experience. And it's for this aspect of understanding ourselves on a much deeper level, who we truly are as this soul, as this energetic being, and our life is supposed to help us to release the limitations that this physical body puts on us without releasing the physical body in order to increase and continue to expand that awareness to come back to that pure energy of source of who we really are, is to remind ourselves of who we really are, be able to create our own existence. But yeah, that's
I
it.
concur. 100%. Well said.
Thank you.
You are just fabulous,
Oh,
my
thank
girl.
you. This
Oh
has
my
been
God.
fun. Yeah, it's
So
been really fun.
fabulous. How can people learn more about you and the work that you do?
Sure. So everywhere on every social media platform, I just use my full name as Carrie Cardozo. So I'm on Instagram. I actually just started a YouTube channel. We just started it, so there aren't many videos up there, but we did that. I have a TikTok started, Facebook, LinkedIn, or my website is carriecardozo.com. Yeah.
And if people want to get that annual and or monthly uh, reading that you do, whatever, what are you calling it?
Yeah, it's a universal energy reading, 2025
Universal
universal energy
energy
reading.
reading
Yeah.
can they sign up for it? Is there a fee for it? Can they sign up online on
Yeah,
your
they can sign up
website?
online. If they find me on Instagram or just go to carriecardozo.com. Yes, there is a fee to join, or get the replay for it, or especially if they want their own session. Yeah, there's the
Yeah,
replay.
great. Terrific. Well, Miss Carrie, thank you so much
Thank
for
you. This has
taking
been
the
great.
time to join us and sharing your adventures and your wisdom and your experiences and all of that with us today. In the meantime, everybody, we're sending you lots of love from Sweet Home, Alabama, mwah! And from Connecticut, too, where Carrie is. We'll see you next time. To enhance your spiritual journey, click on one of the videos below and remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share with your family and friends.